Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a high powered virtual panel discussion titled Industrious India Bouncing Back from Crisis, Eyeing a Global Advantage. I am Roudra Bhattacharya, and we are joined today by a group of eminent panelists. I'd like to first introduce Mr. Sunil Mathur, MD and CEO, Siemens India, and Chairman, CII Western Region. Mr. Mathur has been with Siemens for over 30 years. He has a wide experience of integrating companies, creating joint ventures, and turning around non-performing businesses in an international environment. Our second guest is Mr. S Sodhi, Managing Director of Amul, who has spearheaded some of its most innovative and widely acclaimed marketing campaigns. A case in point is the Amul Doodh Pita Hai India campaign. His mentor was none other than Dr. Verghese Kurian, the father of the White Revolution. On the panel is also Mr. Vikram Kirloskar, Chairman and Managing Director, Kirloskar Systems Ltd, and Vice Chairman, Toyota Kirloskar Motor. Mr. Kirloskar is also the immediate past president of CII. He has considerable experience in all aspects of manufacturing, having developed at least 25 greenfield sites over the last 30 years. Our fourth panelist for today is Mr. Puneet Chhatwal, Managing Director and CEO of the Indian Hotels Company Limited. Mr. Chhatwal has over 3 decades of leadership experience at highly acclaimed hotel groups in Europe and North America. He has won many awards, including the prestigious Carlson Fellowship. A huge welcome to all of you, and I really look forward to an insightful discussion. India has been known to be industrious. For the past decade, it has been the poster boy for the world economy with among the highest growth rates. With the pandemic dealing a sharp blow to key sectors, this momentum, however, has faltered. As we now gear up to hasten recovery, one question looms large. How do we climb back on the growth trajectory? How do we emerge as a global industry powerhouse in this new world order? Needless to say, all of this will require resilience and partnership between industry, government, and citizens. I'd like my guests to enlighten us on this. Before we begin, though, I'd like to mention that we will be taking up a few questions from our audiences at the end. We have people viewing across Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Please feel free to put down your questions in the comment section, and we'll see to it that at least some of these are answered by our eminent panelists. Now, to begin today's discussion. Mr. Sodhi, the first question is for you. The last few months not only saw demand contraction, but also significant supply side constraints. How have you leveraged technology to drive efficiencies and counter some of these challenges?
Rodraji, thank you very much. But I don't think what you have said is applied to the food or to the dairy industry. Neither there is a demand contraction. Shift may have taken place reasonably simply because demand for food or dairy is directly proportional to the number of stomachs. And we are fortunate that during COVID, this number of stomachs have not reduced, 1.35 billion. And similarly, the supply side also, dairy is we have got 300 million cows and buffalo in India, and they have not come under lockdown or under COVID till now. So they have been producing milk in the morning and evening, and the farmers have to milk it. 100 million families have been dependent. But as far as technology is concerned, I think that has been used till the hill as far as the dairy food is concerned. Let me tell you, in dairy, technology starts right from milking of animals, milk procurement, chilling, logistic, milk processing, distribution, retailing. All is the technology, and in between all things is integrated through digital. And during this COVID, The digital transformation, digital technology has the maximum. I'm not talking about remote meeting like this or remote working from home. No, that is definitely advantage that everybody used. But in our case, right, we could make out which farmer in which 36 lakh farmers are our members, how much milk they have given in each 18,500 village cooperative societies, which village cooperative society milk is there, still not collected, what is the temperature. Each 10,000 milk tankers which are collecting milk is GPS. So if any milk tankers have been stopped by any fellow, any police fellow or any fellow, or if my milk tankers have been stopped at the Goa border, which border it has been stopped, which IG police, which collector I have to talk and collect if some vehicle has not gone to the market for the milk. And similarly, when everybody else worked at less than the processing capacity, we have to work at 115 to 120% capacity. Reason is simple, because unorganized sector stop milk procurement, so we got more pressure to procure milk, and every day we are collecting and giving 140 crore rupees cash in the hand of farmers. So you can imagine, in 200 days, we have given around 28,000 crore rupees cash in the hands of the farmers, which is around 17% more than the previous year. So for us, there was no stoppage. Unmute, please. Please unmute, Godrej.
Sorry, sir. So this is really interesting. What you're essentially saying is that your demand has gone up during this period because a lot of the unorganized sector has actually not been able to supply milk. And technology has been a significant sort of a supporting sort of tool. I mean, real time being able to know how your sort of supply chain is panning out has been a big bonus. Mr. Mathur, so the fourth industrial revolution has been coming for a while, right? I mean, this is something that we have been talking about for the past few years. Do you think the pandemic now will speed up the fourth industrial revolution? Can you elaborate on the coexistence of infrastructure 4.0 and industry 4.0?
Oh, absolutely. So I think, we've been talking for a long time about being in a VUCA world. I think the pandemic has brought home what it means to be in a volatile environment. And this has been something where we have had to deal, and industry has had to deal with the unknown. We've had lockdowns. We've had lockdowns in different parts of the country at different parts at different times. We've had customers who have not been certain about whether they can stay open or closed. You've had supply chains that have been unpredictable over a period of time. And there have been a lot of these areas that have been completely unpredictable during the lockdown. So really at this point in time, digitalization, Industry 4.0 is really something that has proven that it is really the right thing to manage this scenario. And why do I say that? Essentially, when you are looking at Industry 4.0, or you're looking at a business environment which is unpredictable, where you need flexibility, where you need to keep control on your costs, where you have got a serious constraint on capex, and this is where most industries around the country are actually constrained now. They're constrained with cash, they're constrained with capex, and they're constrained on cost in an environment that is completely volatile. So that's one problem that has come up and has accentuated. The other problem has been customers have become much more demanding. They are wanting tailor-made solutions. No one is looking now for one size fits all. And it doesn't matter which industry you are in, it is becoming evident and more real that we have to be able, in a manufacturing company or in any industry, to be dealing with a customer as an individual. So the earlier philosophies of serial manufacturing, etc., are going, and you're having to look at a batch size of one. So now you've got a batch size of one on the one hand, you've got you've got cash constraints, capex constraints, and cost constraints on the other. How do you balance these two requirements in a very volatile environment? And I think I can very clearly say Industry 4.0 can give you that solution. And we can elaborate a little bit more on it later in the discussion. This is not for the big boys. This is also particularly for the small and medium enterprises. And we can elaborate on that a little bit later. But linked to that, you need a strong infrastructure. It will not work to have an Industry 4.0 if you are not able to generate an infrastructure 4.0. And by that, I mean you need, for example, continuous supply, reliable supply of electricity. You need a reliable supply of networking, right? You need broadband, and you need broadband not only for the big boys, but right through the industry. You need a very strong logistics chain. Air cargo, rail cargo, road cargo. They need to be integrated. You need an integrated supply chain linked into your manufacturing process, and so on and so forth. So infrastructure and Industry 4.0 really go hand in hand and are hugely interdependent on each other.
Understood. So Mr. Mathur, what I hear is that the entire ecosystem needs to be brought at a level to be able to sort of work together. Definitely, I mean, without the bandwidth or the availability of internet and other facilities, I mean, if Mr. Sodhi's trucks want to communicate in remote areas, they will not be able to. But this is also a silver lining, right? The pandemic is a silver lining because beyond just doing pilot projects for so long, now you really have a live case for the entire industry where you can show, okay, these are the benefits for you right here of digitalization, and this is the right time. There's no better time than right now, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we would never have had these kind of conversations earlier on, digitally, right? Things like remote commissioning, remote monitoring, remote performance monitoring, energy efficiency monitoring. These have all come up and become even more critical during the pandemic time. And we realize how critical it is to keep Mr. Sodhi's supply chain smooth and running, and without digitalization and automation, and without giving him an app on a screen or in his hand that he can monitor the efficiency of his process, he would be seriously impacted. The same thing with Mr. Kirloskar on the automotive side. So I think irrespective, the performance, particularly at these times, has become accentuated, and the criticality of digitalization has become accentuated at this point in time.
Right. Mr. Kirloskar, over to you. I'm looking at, India and India's place in the world economy. So do you think India can accelerate growth in certain multiples of the world economy as we sort of are expected to bounce back? There's this conversation of a V-shaped recovery, a very, very optimistic picture. We are good at optimism, right, as a country, which is a great thing. But what is your view here? And are we well sort of poised to assume the leadership that a lot of global economies are now looking at us for?
See, one is I'd just like to say that I don't see any silver lining in the pandemic, okay? Because, and I'm sure Puneet, etc., many guys will say there's no silver lining. It's a terrible situation. It's hurting people very, very badly. It's hurt people very badly, and it's going to take a long time to get out of this. And there are going to be a lot of people who are going to be seriously hurt economically. Their whole families are going to be in terrible shape after this. So I think we have to just not say that. But getting back to India taking a position in the world, my view always has been that yes, we could have done it with the pandemic or without the pandemic, and we can do it with or without the pandemic if we get down to our basics, that is quality, cost, and delivery. If we are in the reason the IT industry has done well is because they have been able to show a certain degree of quality, cost, and delivery, and therefore they have made their place in the market in the world. And if we have to do the same in manufacturing and manufactured goods and services, we have to do the same. So I believe if we have to use an opportunity of the pandemic, it is to get back to basics. Improve your, it's, digitally speaking, it's 0 and 1. So zero defect, and think of every customer as one person. And each customer is important. Each customer is spending a lot of money. For me, I keep telling my people, forget about the size of a company. Think of a customer who buys one car. For him, it is 100% of his purchase. It's a lifetime saving for many of them, especially individuals. So we have to make sure he has experience with the vehicle, which is second to none. It never breaks down. He gets good service, and he's able to resell it at a good value. I think these are basic things. One of the other basic issues which I have in a problem with Indian factories and generally Indian businesses is a concept of maintenance. And it's whether you maintain a process or whether you maintain equipment, cleanliness, all these issues. If we have to get into a world class a manufacturing country, we have to pay attention to all these. It cannot be just jugaad and stuff. Yes, of course, there's a lot of innovation required to make, to use the current situation. In Industry 4.0, so many people I've seen in our plants also, we are letting people innovate using technology, and we're getting fantastic results, fantastic cost savings. All those things are there. Indians, factories, people are coming up with great solutions. All those will happen. But back to basics, top class quality, top class costs, competitive costs, and competitive delivery is number one. Number two is looking after the environment. The world is not going to buy from you if you don't take care of your environment and don't take care of your employees and all these labor practices and all that. So you have to have top class in that, and you have to build up a level of governance which people around the world will accept. And these are basic things. Maintenance, and the final thing, as a country, if we have to again really go ahead, we need to be in a society where we have industry and government mutual trust. We have to build that mutual trust and respect. Industry and society mutual trust and respect, and government and society mutual trust and respect. This requires hard work. It's very easy for me to say it. It doesn't happen overnight. But I think these are areas we have to focus in, and then we can certainly be competitive. I've seen our cost structure. I've seen the cost structure in the Toyota Kirloskar plants here. Same assemblies or same engines, gearboxes in different plants around the world, and we are very competitive. Cost-wise, we are very competitive. Quality-wise, we are competitive, and I think everyone can be that. You have to focus on it, and not and chase the market, chase the customer, do what the customer wants.
Right. Thanks a lot, sir. I think some very important points that you made there, including some of these changes are going to be systemic. They will have to be long term for the economy. Mr. Chhatwal, the hospitality sector has been among the worst hit during the pandemic, right? I mean, uh, heavily human capital dependent, of course. Has technology played a role for the industry in adapting to this crisis?
Well, I think technology has always played a role. The evolution of technology in any industry has had an impact, I would say, on all the three uh, words used by Mr. Kirloskar on the quality, cost, and delivery. So I think uh, getting to the basics, these are really the three basics, especially your quality and your cost defines your competitive advantage. If there is a seamless delivery, the zero defect, and keeping that customer in mind. And I think we in the hospitality industry, especially with our mainstream brand, Taj has been able to do that quite well, and has consistently demonstrated over 100 years that not only it can adapt to changing needs, wants of customers, but can also leverage technology consistently improve on all its performance parameters. And that's how we get into the guest histories. That's how we get into that's how we get into better internet experience. That's how we digitally, sell marketing services. On the other hand, having said that, you have a lockdown. The hotels have been shut down. The best of the digitization in the world does not help them. We are coming from a period of, I would say, mid-March, almost July, where majority of the hotels were shut, not only in India, but also nationally. Our properties in New York and San Francisco are still shut down. We just opened up London, we opening up and New York. Dubai opened up earlier, but what I want to make a point is that even now, as we speak today, the restaurants in Mumbai have not opened, or in Maharashtra. In Delhi, they've just opened up the restaurants and bars yesterday or day before. So, you can have the best of innovation, you can have the best of industry, also have to be allowed to be. And I think instead of saying that the demand remains strong, as somebody alluded to, for us, it's a case of demand collapse. And I'm not sure how much lockdown has helped or how much the opening of hotels would have contributed to number of cases, but uh, it's an important industry for India. It's not an industry just for the elitists. It is the industry that not only creates jobs and contributes double-digit international GDP, including the Indian GDP. More important, if we can manage the digitization, the modernization, and the quality and the cost of the delivery of the experience, this industry has the capability of playing multiplicator of creating 10 new. I think, I think that's the issue. I don't think the answer is just digital.
Okay. So I'm having some audio issues at your end. Really sorry. Just if it's a mic or something, if you could just make a note of that. Just a follow-up question to what you said. I understand about technology, but what about business model innovation? I mean, I think this is something that as an industry, the hospitality industry is looking at, because even if the government or the administration allows hotels and restaurants to open up, it will still take time for confidence among consumers to sort of for them to come back, right? So how are you approaching that as a challenge?
I think we have been on the forefront during the pandemic too. I think we stood up for, let's say, in the city of Mumbai, hosting all the medical staff of the BMC hospital in all of our properties. We were on the forefront of hosting customers from the Vande Bharat that came back. During this pandemic, as an example, we came up with a home delivery service for the food under the brand name of Human, including with the help of digital, creating our own app instead of using a third-party platform. We partnered with other Tata Group companies to, start merchandising our product. Start so we've come up with a series of initiatives have helped us, create some revenue. We call it actually capitalize on latent revenue, which we have never had before. These are not our typical business segment of having medical workers or quarantine guests or home delivery services. I think not only as a nation, but as human beings, we are very adaptable to these kind of situations, and a lot of innovation comes in because of necessity becoming the mother of invention. When you innovate and you use digital sources available to you so that you can excel at age.
Got it, sir. Thank you. Mr. Sodhi, this question is about India's sort of position versus, our export and our potential for looking at other markets for growth. And, we are positioned very strongly in several industries, and the dairy sector is definitely one of them, right? How are you leveraging the strength of our country, of Amul in the global markets? How do you think the government policies can help you here in a supporting
Yeah,
sort of role?
yeah,
Yes.
Rodraji, you're right. India is a very strong as far as dairy is concerned. We are 21% of world's total milk production or the milk market. And India is not only today world largest producer, but also the largest market and fastest growing market. We are growing overall 5%, but organized branded product market is growing at the rate of 12 to 14%. Nowhere that much growth is coming. But for the organized player like Amul or others, potentiality is like that only two-thirds is unorganized. So leverage as far as global is concerned, definitely we have got a lot of market. But look, if you look as an industrialist, where we should focus, which is the fastest and largest and potential market, India is. USA, Europe, all other are saturated market, not growing, or rather some USA is declining. If we go there, we have to snatch market share. So no doubt we are largest exporter. We are exporting around 800 crore rupees dairy products, and we'll continue to go 20-30% export. But let me tell you, whole world focus is India. So we are not going to deviate it from India. And like you see, one thing let me also tell you, Mr. Vikram Kirloskar also mentioned, and I take it like that. See, in you can only become global player if you are market leader in India. And you can only become market leader in India if you have got technology, quality, and affordability. Otherwise, just by saying made India, you can't become or Indian company. Nobody will buy your butter and cheese. And like Mr. Kirloskar, let me tell you, we are his brand. Or I mean, I'm using one of his Innova, one of his latest Camry, and my chairman is using Fortuner. So reason is not simple. We like Mr. Kirloskar, we like Toyota. No, sir. No. We like it because of quality, technology, which is latest, and affordability. So in India, if you meet these three criteria, you can become domestic leader, and then you can leverage your leadership and the scale to win the global market.
Right, sir. Mr. Kirloskar, I think you must have seen just a day or two back, there was this news about the production-linked incentive schemes being, the government planning to expand it to other sectors as well. It's worked very well for the telecom space, big announcements from Apple and Samsung. But now the plan is to sort of encourage other industries as well to take, leverage the scheme. Now, my question to you, I mean, these schemes are coming. How do you think they will help spur investment, especially at this time when global capital is looking at better avenues for growth, right? I mean, there's a reason why the stock market was doing well. So, how do you view this? What are the positives here?
Well, the schemes have certainly played their part, especially in telephone manufacturing.
Right.
I think one of the numbers that we talk about sometimes is that the import of electronic hardware may exceed the import of oil in the years to come. Right now, oil is our biggest issue, and electronics is going to be one of the biggest issues. So, what I'm hoping is that these schemes will especially help all the various electronic component manufacturers to start manufacturing in India. But listen, schemes are not the only thing that will that make things in India, that enable you to come to India. It certainly helps. You need an entrepreneur who has the confidence to invest that kind of money in India as well. Putting in fabs, making chips, all this requires huge amount of money. So you require, and the schemes are a terrific positive point, but you need an entrepreneur with guts and the confidence in India that the policies in India will continue on the long term. Whatever is announced is not going to get changed every 2-3 years. They are 15-year, 10-year, 15-year directional policies, and they will continue. And that is what is most important for anyone to put that kind of money in India.
Right. So an important takeaway from this is the policy needs to be steady over a 10-year sort of horizon to give confidence
Correct.
to investor, right?
Yes.
And it's great. It's working for one sector. Do you think it can be replicated across others? Which is the big
I,
question.
I think, I must say that the government is trying to make all efforts. I haven't seen this kind of effort ever made in the last so many years in trying to reach out to all industry, trying to understand what the issues are. From the industry side, also, we are asking for too much at times and asking, things what we should do ourselves, asking. But anyway, I think this conversation and this dialogue is going along quite well. I've been part of this dialogue in many areas. I must appreciate that the government is listening very hard and is trying to come up with policies. One of the problems when you have so much of conversation is you can end up with just trying to solve short-term problems. So we are constantly working with the government from CII side. Sunil knows, and wherever we get into these conversations, that yes, the short-term issues are also to be sorted out, but let's put in policies for a long term, which will not change for 10, 15 years. But they are talking and they are listening very strongly. Everyone is listening. How much they're able to react too fast is always a issue. But I think in a lot of areas they're reacting very fast, like you've seen these specialized schemes that are coming out.
Right, sir. I think this is definitely, gives a lot of confidence to many investors. Mr. Mathur, bringing you in here. So from a policy intervention standpoint, which is really required to boost digital implementation across industries, what factors will play to our strengths?
So I don't, to be honest, I actually completely agree with what Vikram just said. I think the policy interventions are one thing. We need the entrepreneurial spirit on the other side. To be honest, for digitalization or digital implementation, Industry 4.0, right now at the stage that we are of development on the curve of Industry 4.0, not too many policy changes are actually required. These policy changes will probably kick in when we are at the upper end of the band over there. But essentially, we need not only the big boys, as I said earlier, to go in for digitalization of the manufacturing processes, but also the entire supply chain, because you do need that integrated supply chain and integrated manufacturing process to happen if we want to be at a level that can deliver on cost, quality, and delivery, as Vikram mentioned earlier. Now, this means that we have to actually get down, roll up our sleeves, and the entire small and medium enterprises need to start actually experimenting with and slowly getting into the digitalization area. Let me give you an example of the impact that it could have for small and medium enterprises. We manufacture contactors, and we were doing 80 variants of a contactor on 3 production lines. The competition had many more variants of it, and every time the business came and asked for an additional variant, we would need to bring in an extra production line. Long story short, we went in for Industry 4.0 digitalization. We were able to go from 80 variants of these contactors on 3 lines to 180 variants of the contactors on 1 line, from 13 quality checks to 52 quality checks, from a manufacturing time of 21 seconds down to 9 seconds. Because you're using one line only, you're using less space, less energy, less everything there, and your resources. We were able to ramp up our productivity, ramp up our volumes using the same number of resources. Now, if you look at a small and medium enterprise, and this is not rocket science, by the way, this is actually saving capital expenditure. So if you look at a small and medium enterprise that is really strapped for cash and therefore cannot really go in for capital expenditure to expand, this is really the answer. You're able to produce more with less, you're able to customize, you're able to increase your quality levels substantially. And look, the world is moving globally already into Industry 4.0. We cannot be left behind. We are having factories now, and we have one of our factories in Germany having a productivity and a quality level of 99.9%. Now, that cannot be done just by using labor force. You do need automation and digitalization to deliver those levels. Now, and that's why if India has got to be the manufacturing base, and there's no reason why it cannot, we have the strongest resource of software engineers in the world. We are providing software skills worldwide. They're producing some of the most amazing programs there. We have the manufacturing skill as well. We have the capabilities. If we bring them together in an infrastructure 4.0 environment, there's no one that can beat us.
Thank you, Mr. Mathur. I think one of the follow-up questions to that would be on the skilling aspect of MSMEs to be able to sort of work with Industry 4.0. But before I get there, Mr. Chhatwal, a question on investments, sort of the horizon for India over the next few months. I mean, for many industries, 2020 has been a washout, has been a very difficult year. Media industry as well, right? I mean, not only the hospitality industry. So, just wanted to understand what does that mean for the investment plans for this year? Do you think they will be significantly sort of delayed, scaled back, or are we still sort of holding on to our plans? And not only for that, I mean, industry sort of level. Sorry.
Yeah, I think the industry globally and including in India has had to cut back on the capex, and that's very clear because you have to protect your cash flow. So whatever was necessary is being done, and what is not necessary and is a luxury is postponed or delayed. A part of it is also a consequence of the lockdown. So if you have a lockdown for 5 months or 6 months, and most of your labor force has gone back to their houses, you cannot even execute on those promises the way you would have executed in a pre-COVID time. So I think the investments in the short term will definitely decline. In the medium term, they will revive to a great extent. And over longer term, there is so much that needs to be done, especially on the tourism and, as the fellow panelists have mentioned, on the infrastructure front, and also making India a very attractive destination. A lot of investment will go into this industry, both, I think, from the government as well as from the private sector. And I think we have not even seen 10 or 20% of what you see today. Is the potential is 5 times more over the next 10 years or so. So I'm very cautiously optimistic about the investment in the industry. And if the last 10, 20 years, if you look at it as an example, if you look at the airport in Mumbai, the airport in Delhi, the airport at the new Bangalore International Airport, so the airports, the hotels, not just the luxury segment, but in all segments, because travel is not just a luxury, it's a fundamental need for both business and leisure travelers. So I think you'll see a lot of that kind of growth, whether people drive to destinations or they take high-speed trains to destinations. We are working with Siemens to bid for one of those projects together with Sunil's team to facilitate that. And that's our viewpoint, not for now 6 months or 1 year. If we went into that kind of a venture, we're talking about some kind of investment over the next 30 to 50 years. So I think this industry is very poised. India is very poised. And as Mr. Sodhi keeps saying, we are talking about 1.3 billion people. The needs and wants of 1.3 billion coming from a poor to a growing to a fast growing to a mature economy needs certain things. And when you have to provide those things, the investment is a very normal consequence of it. Whether that capital comes nationally, internationally, or a combination of both, the capital will definitely flow in. And I fully agree with what Mr. Kirloskar said. Yes, we are getting a good hearing, but if we come up with policies which are more long term and not like a short term tactical thing, I think we will even attract far more investments than we have ever imagined.
Right. So you're essentially watching for the long-term thought that Mr. Kirloskar has already sort of spoken.
Absolutely, short term, everyone can do anything, but ultimately, anything for to be sustainable you have to think mid to long term. The only difference is the long term has got reduced from 50 years to like a 20-year, 10-year, 15-year horizon. You can't say like 20 years ago that long term would have meant the next 50 years.
Right. It's great. Then we have a stable government. Then in that case, in order to carry out that vision, so to say, Mr. Kirloskar, I'm coming back to the point of MSMEs that Mr. Mathur has spoken about, and would want to bring in Mr. Sodhi as well, because both the automotive sector as well as I would imagine the dairy sector would depend on a lot of downstream, a lot of smaller companies supporting the business, right? So the MSME sector has been facing an existential crisis for the past few months. I mean, especially with the moratorium expected to now sort of get closed down, it might become a bigger problem than it already is for the sector. How does industry and the government, the larger players and the government, sort of get together in protecting this sector, very important sector?
Yeah, it's I think MSMEs have also had a very, very tough time. Some people in niche products, is a friend of mine in Bangalore who makes plastic wrapping and Ziploc bags and stuff like that. He converted to PPEs very fast. He's running 3 shifts a day, 7 days a week. But some of these innovative entrepreneurial types have been able to do a changeover. But for bulk of us, like my auto suppliers, who are they're large companies in tier 1, but certainly MSMEs as they go down to tier 2 and tier 3, they've had a very, very tough time. Especially, let's say the money flow has stopped because there is no supply. But also, when money flow stops and you want to try to retain your skills, it gets very, very difficult. Whether it is for Industry 4.0 and the digital economy and the digital manufacturing, you require skills to keep it running. And you can't afford to let go of your skills, otherwise we cannot come back in. So that's one of the biggest challenges people are facing without money. The government has taken care of loan moratoriums and various other things, easier supply of money to MSMEs. Some of those things have worked, it's helped, but retaining the skill level is a huge question. We as a company, we don't have multiple suppliers for a component. We go with single sourcing and we work on a partnership basis. So we don't have two suppliers competing for one part. We tend to use the same part for a long term, and we keep working with the supplier to improve their quality levels and their cost levels over the years. And they become it works again on mutual trust and respect. So we have had to make sure, just as we depend on a single supplier, they depend on us as some of them as a single customer. So we have to look after them in the same manner that we look after ourselves. So that's what we are doing. But for MSMEs, it is going to be tough. It's going to be tough to retain the skills with migrant labor and all that. That's a big challenge. I think it's up to the large companies who are their customers. MSME customers, I think they have to make sure that they reach out to their suppliers and make sure that they support them and get them back on their feet as we go through this.
So I think it's all a question of really a cash flow question at the end of the day. Will you be able
Cash
to
flow,
support?
of course, is going to be is a problem right now all through the economy. If
Right.
at all there is cash flow, see, just having loans has no meaning. Loans means you have to. It is not doing anything. It's a temporary relief unless you're building solid capital assets which are going to return stuff. But a loan to cover a loss or loan to cover a short cash flow and things like that, it's a temporary. It's a band-aid relief. At the end
Right.
of it, I think the stronger companies, and especially the companies at the top of the tier, the OEMs, they have to support their suppliers and get them back on their feet as we get along.
Mr. Sodhi, anything you would like to add to that? How do you? Yeah, yes, sir.
very. First thing about like Mr. Kirloskar mentioned, or Mr. Chhatwal, or Mr. Mathur, long-term policies, I can give example of milk. Government of India took 45 years this policy level decision that we have to become Atmanirbhar, we have to encourage local production, and we have to discourage imports and no FTA, no zero duty imports. And today we have become so big, 9 times more production, from one third of USA to double than USA, just in the last 40 years. So because of long-term policy level decision. Coming to MSME, let me tell you, dairy sector, one side we are using numbers of MSME for this, whether packaging material suppliers or some small equipment supplier, and we ensured them that during lockdown they also work. We took permissions from them from the Ministry of Home Affairs for packaging material so that all packaging suppliers are open within 2-3 days. Similarly, the last, like Mr. Mathur Siemens, we have, I mean, those are latest PCS, process control system, on 9 version during just few months only. So it is, I think we ensure that whether MSME or the large supplier, they are able to provide their services, provide their technology and what we coordinate. We can't leave them just like that they'll manage. Because when milk is essential, we have to see all associated with milk should get that status, and we ensured it.
Right, sir. Mr. Mathur, just to add to that, I mean, the question that I said that I'll ask you a little later down the line, the skilling question. I mean, MSMEs being brought up to the digitized sort of world. Where do we stand on that, and how do we sort of help smaller companies? Are the larger companies, along with the government, already playing an active role in upskilling our MSME workforce? What are we doing there, and is that as big a challenge as I think maybe it is?
Maybe I take the issue of MSME and look at it more from an example of how it's working in other parts of the world. Let me take the example of Germany as a country that Puneet and I know very well. In Germany, 99% of German companies are actually what they call Mittelstand or MSMEs. Now, the definition is a little bit different to what it is over here, but 99% of German companies are categorized as small and medium enterprises. 95% of them are actually family owned. Now, these small and medium enterprises have produced 1,300 world market leaders. 1,300 world market leaders. They contribute to about 50%, over 50% of the country's economic output. So this is really, they are the bedrock. And many years ago, they were actually called hidden champions of the German technological revolution. And even today, typically a family business is a joint ownership between the family. They've got management in there, etc. So it's a classical family business that is there. So how did they manage it, and what lessons can we learn out of that? I think a couple of things, and I'll come to the question that you raised as well. First thing that they did was they are because they are family owned. Most of them are actually located in rural areas, so they are spreading employment and investment right across the country, and therefore keeping their costs down. Um, for them, there were tax and investment incentives only for the small and medium enterprise to set up a business and to make it effective. The second thing was Germany has a decentralized banking and finance system where there is a large number of regional and local banking institutions, like, for example, the Sparkasse and so on, which actually concentrate on business activities and and their small and medium clients in the regions where they are situated. The third is a very strong linking between business and community. And this is where the small and medium companies are the main beneficiaries and supporters of German manufacturing by using the apprenticeship system. 60% of all Germans are trained in manufacturing as apprentices in the field of manufacturing. And this is where the dual training system, part of the skilling, and this is the fundamental part of skilling that the German industry has introduced. It's a dual training system which allows trainees to divide their time between classroom instruction at a vocational school and first-hand experience on the job at a company. So approximately 83% of trainees are employed by small and medium enterprises, keeps the costs down. They are in turn feeding the evolutionary and the entire technological revolution there. And they've been credited for the fact that Germany has a comparatively low youth unemployment. So I think these are certain things where I believe the dual vocational educational training program that Germany has is really something that can be introduced here. To be honest, the government of India is really interested in it. We have been in discussions with many organizations, many of the ministries there. We are collaborating with over 60 ITIs around the country where we have introduced this, and today we have over 30,000 trainees in India that we have introduced and that we are skilling in this dual vocational educational training program. More importantly, linking them into industry so that they're not only trained and left, but then part of their training happens on the job with companies, and the training that is given is relevant to a company. It's not only classroom, right, but it's relevant to a company. And we have a success rate of about 85-90% right now, where companies have found them so good that they've decided to keep them on. So we have a plan to ramp this up from 30,000 to 500,000 students, 50% male, 50% female. But I think this is really where the skilling is going to be very, very critical, particularly in the manufacturing area.
Great. I think this is very interesting. I think the new education policy that was recently launched also talks about experiential learning. I think this is a part of it, getting the hands-on experience rather than a very academic sort of learning that which our current system sort of focuses on. I have two more questions, in fact, but I think we are running out of time. So I will jump to a few audience questions instead. Two questions, and I have one interesting sort of question coming in. This is for Mr. Chhatwal. Sir, so the pandemic has definitely changed the hospitality sector significantly. I mean, what are some of these lasting changes that you sort of see impacting the industry, which will sort of change the way you work? And I mean, one of the business model innovations that you spoke about was this home delivery. I mean, do you think these things are going to last? Are some of these changes on a long-term basis great for the industry?
Sure. I think a lot of these things are going to last. We did not see the need to participate in that business, but home delivery business has been in existence for a very long time. So I think very importantly, I think it's an opportunity for us to focus, and I would want to know where the hat also of CII, like Mr. Kirloskar and Sunil, because I had the tourism committee of CII, and I think we should not forget how many people are dependent on just the S. Forget the SME, the medium scale. The small is the rickshaw wala. The small is the shikara wala. The small is the your tour guide. The small is the guy who's put the river rafting together. And there is so much scope, there's so much scope in getting these things done. And as they say, this pandemic, this too shall pass. There is a life after this COVID and there's a life after virus. So I think we are at the moment and during COVID times, but post virus, post COVID and post vaccine, when we get into that phase of life, I think it's very important to look at all the opportunities which have not been tapped. And I always use the forum, so sorry for taking one extra minute. The time has come to consider tourism at the state level as an industry and at the center level as infrastructure, and to include tourism into the concurrent list of the constitution. I think that's something which we have been requesting for, and that will help lead charge, create employment, and create growth in our economy.
Thank you, sir. A very direct question for Mr. Kirloskar. When do you think the auto industry will recover? I mean, this is somebody asking of social media. I mean, I think maybe just your personal view on this matter. Mr. Kirloskar?
Sorry, I missed the question. You lost the sound.
Yeah, a very direct question from one of our viewers on social media. When do you think the auto industry will recover? Your personal view maybe, because this is a little bit looking into a crystal ball, but yeah.
When the economy starts growing beyond 6%. I really don't know what else to say, because it's totally dependent on economic growth.
Mr. Mathur, a question for you. So when do you see India becoming a leading exporter in the automation field is the question, but I would rather term it a high technology. How do we get there where we are sort of a leading exporter of high technology? I mean, Industry 4.0,
Yeah, I think it will only happen when we are able to create an infrastructure 4.0. That's a foundation for it. And when we are able to get every manufacturing organization, irrespective of size, to move into that level of being automated and digitalized.
Okay. Thanks a lot, sir. I think we are really, I think our time got a little stressed. I had a few more questions, but we will let that go today. Thanks a lot for joining us, to all our panelists and our audience who are viewing us on social media. This was very insightful. Some very interesting takeaways, I think, from this discussion. Most importantly, I mean, like I said, I'm a bit of an optimistic person, and the fact that you say that the government is having good conversations with all our industry, and we see some sort of a stability in terms of policy, that seems to be a positive as we head towards recovery for this country. Thanks a lot. Stay safe and keep watching. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.